Good morning, everyone. Good morning. We woke up with the sun, and yet again, we have clouds before noon, but I'm optimistic. I've seen the forecast for the weekend. Welcome to RiverWoods Durham. My name is Sherry Young. I've met many of you, and I look forward, if I haven't met you prior to today, to getting a chance to talk with you. You have all come to hear from a panel of our residents talk about how they made the decision to move to RiverWoods Durham. We're going to get started in just a moment. I just want to go over a couple of housekeeping comments before we begin. The first is, if you haven't already silenced your phone, now would be a good time to do it so that we can give all of our attention to our 5 lovely residents. The second would be there are index cards and pens on the table. Those are for you to write your questions down, and we will get them from you after the presentation. We'll have some live Q&A with the residents. And then the final housekeeping note is, if you need the restroom, it's just back out the door that you came through and to the right. It'll be on your immediate right, just beyond our table outside the entrance here. So the program this morning is going to be hearing from our 5 residents and then answering your questions, and then we will have a lunch together, during which time the panelists are going to join you at the table. That's why we've tried to keep an open seat or 2 at each table, as well as one of the staff here, so that you could ask us questions on a one-on-one basis. So without any further ado, I'm going to introduce our 5 panelists, and then they're going to go through one at a time and share a little bit about how they made their decision, and then I'll have a follow-up question for them, and then we'll take your questions as well. So beginning on the left, we have Elaine Lautenborn. Next to Elaine is Jeannie Richards. In the middle is Rand O'Brien, and next to Rand is his lovely partner, Susan Guy. And bringing us to the conclusion will be Joanne O'Connor. So thank you all. We so appreciate you taking the time to spend with us this morning. And Elaine, I'm going to ask you to get us started, please.
Good morning. Working? Okay. I'm very pleased to be asked this morning to share a story. I'm the newest resident.
A little bit closer to the mic, Elaine. Just hold it a little bit closer to your mouth.
Thank you. So actually, I attended this, I think I said that I've been here about 5.5 months. And I attended this luncheon last year, but I was sitting where you're sitting. And I never dreamed that just 1 year later, I would be up here. So why did I make this decision? Well, I'm a resident from this part of the state, and I was vaguely aware when RiverWoods was being built, but I had never considered selling my house and moving anyplace. I lived in my home for 47 years. That's daunting to think about yourself in terms of moving. But I started realizing that my circle was getting smaller as friends aged and becoming less able, and I lost too many friends as they passed on. What family I have live in other states, and I didn't want to be a burden to anyone else anyway. So I decided I need to plan for the future. I knew that my good fortune in terms of health and lifestyle wouldn't last forever. And I thought what I needed to do is to be proactive. So I picked up the phone and made an appointment to come over and just see this place. It was Sherry that answered the phone. And as we walked around, what I saw was seemingly happy, friendly people going about their lives. And I thought, this could be me. And then the idea of unburdening myself from maintaining a home now that I lived alone. I'm not very handy. I have to hire people for everything. And I was losing interest, frankly. in maintaining a home. I think the long wait list actually made it easier to make the decision because nothing was going to change. Put down some money and go about my life, and in some unknown future time, it would occur. I hoped that moving to RiverWoods Durham overall would give me peace of mind about the future, and it has. So, what's particularly appealing to RiverWoods Durham, I'd like to say a few words about as I looked at it. One was that it's a nonprofit versus a profit, and that increased the trust factor for me. I knew Durham, it's a lovely community, and it's a real benefit to live in a university community in many ways, and Riverwoods takes advantage of that. Like many of you do, I'm sure, I had very many questions running through my mind, and yet everything fell into place. It's amazing how quickly I felt comfortable living here. Some of the things that are particularly attractive that I'm finding out is the quality of the entertainment brought in here, the concerts, lectures. There's so many ways to get involved. The fitness center was a big draw for me. It's just a very stimulating environment. And I will leave it at that and be happy to answer any questions later. Thank you for listening to my story.
Morning. I had three different reasons that I was looking at when I started to look for another living arrangement. My son had gone to the university system here and then left and went to the University of Virginia to get his doctorate in aeronautical engineering. And just so happened that he spent the next 17 years down there. Charlottesville is a great place. Anyway, he got married to a Virginian and they had a child and they wanted to raise Harper in New Hampshire and not Virginia. So they were looking for homes and moved back to New Hampshire and chose Durham. At the time, I was living in Bow, and I was commuting because it was just before COVID. Then COVID hit, and there were no daycare centers open. So I started trekking 3 days a week over Route 4, and don't want to keep doing this. And then they decided to have a second babe. So I started to look for housing over here in the Coast. Why I did that was, of course, to be near them, but also I knew that I was getting, we don't call it elderly, we're having to look at our longevity a little bit more than we ever did before. So I wanted to not burden him. He's an only child, and if something happened to me, and who knows from day to day what's going to happen, I didn't want the burden to be on him alone in terms of all the decisions that had to be made. So, looking at a CCRC was a gift that I was going to give to him because I knew it would be a burden. The next gift I wanted to give to me because I wanted a lifelong care. I wanted it to be quality. I wanted it to not just be medical care because all we read is if we have a social life and a fit life and good food and intellectual stimulation, as Elaine had talked about. So that was my second reason. It was a gift to me in terms of finding decent, more than decent, long life care for as long as that was going to be. And then the third reason was that Riverwoods was a CCRC. And CCRCs were important to me because I'd had two friends, one in Concord and one here actually in Riverwood, Durham, who lived here and had nothing but wonderful things to say about a CCRC. So when I was looking at that, I also looked at the fact that it was a not for profit, again, something that Elaine had mentioned. There's a real continuity about a CCRC. There's a charitable mission that I believed in and valued. And it was important for me that it be a not for profit. There's a lot of other reasons that I was interested in a not for profit because that charitable mission does turn into a stewardship. And here it feels like it's a stewardship that residents as well as the staff. And there's a lot of value to that for me. A not for profit um, thinks about care and gives that best faith. And that's what was important to me. A not for profit is taking a look at um, a contract with residents, which is really important to me. I think that the whole piece in terms of um, the give to get, when you're living with people who want to give to the facility as much as you want to give to the facility. I mean, giving in many different ways in terms of the social, the well kept building, gardening together is also very important. So, all of that was going to boil down to having no worries, not have to worry about a house, not have to worry about future care, knowing that there was quality built in. And so it became an ease of living for me. I've been here now a year and 4 months, and I can't tell you that there's been no days when I've had any regrets or any thought about the fact that it was not an ease of living. It's very much so. I have to admit, I have not used my oven yet. I don't want to tell you what's in it um, because it's just really a total ease of living. The worries are gone. And I think the big part for me is we've all been involved with careers. With that behind me, I am able to now more live in the present than I've ever been able to before. Every day I wake up and it's not a, oh my God, what do I have to do today on the job? It's, oh, what have I signed up for today? Or what can I do today? Or how many times can I see my granddaughters today? It's all been living in the present. So that's been really good. Why RiverWoods? Durham is location, location, location. I told you that I lived in Bow, and to find housing over here in the seacoast was almost impossible in terms of values. And certainly Riverwoods was there to provide all sorts of quantity and quality of activities to do. And, we're right near Boston, we're right near the mountains, we're certainly 12 miles from the seacoast, so that was all really, really great too. The other thing was staff. As I met staff before and after moving in, there's a really quality about our staff. They are there with us, caring about the charitable mission that's here. And you've all met Sherry. She was right there with me the whole time I was trying to make the decision. And the support that you get here, even before you move in, even when you're moving in, and then after is just, I can't say enough about it. I guess that boils down without having to repeat much of what Elaine said, because I think we all appreciate everything that we really do have. You.
Hi, I'm Rand O'Brien. I have a slightly different story than seems like everybody else has up here. Including her, yes, yes. This was not on my radar whatsoever. I mean, I was like in a different radar facility. Susan and I were part of the original crew that came in here. So we've been here three and a half years. Um, so I was winding down a nearly 50-year psychotherapy practice and was focused on the fact that I had just sort of sunk the foundations for a new kiln because I was going to retire from psychotherapy and become a full-time potter finally. And so my view was like, out there. And Susan said, hey, you know, they're doing RiverWoods in Durham. I think we should look into this. And I went, what? You know? And it was nip and tuck. She had to pull it in, but we had to make decisions, and so it made some sense. And so I covered up the foundations with about 2 feet of soil and put in a garden, and we started this process, which was about 1.5 years before we ever moved in. So the whole process for me was changing from, you know, going in and doing pretty intense work every day to shutting down the house, to doing all the stuff that you got to do in order to be here. And the other piece of this is I grew up on a farm in Iowa, so I tend to be a loner a little bit. And being alone is fine. So being here was a whole new adventure for me because you're not alone here. You got folks around all the time. You know? And that's an issue. It's not so much an issue for Susan. It's like, so, but with that, this isn't a cruise ship. You don't have anybody coming knocking on your door. Hey, there's this thing happening down in, you know, Piscataqua room. Come on down. That doesn't happen. If you just want to be in your room, you can be in your room. And I think that's really important. There's a ton of things to do here. It's a real cafeteria of things of, you know, from different kinds of art lessons. There's poetry lessons, or we just had a improv theater experience, I guess is the best way of putting it, on Monday. There's things happening here as well as taking things off site. But that's all for your own decision. There isn't a like, okay, we're going to do this. You know, why don't you come and do this? You might have friends say that, but that isn't the way this works. And I think that's really important. The other thing I think is really important is that you don't know what's going to happen between here and the wait list and signing up the wait list and being here. That's something that happens. And so we signed up, and about 6 to 8 months after we signed up, I was reasonably healthy. I got this lung diagnosis, which was not a good diagnosis. And it was like, wow, this isn't a bad idea to be into this place now. You know, like, who made this decision? And it was really helpful to be here because of that. So you have to remember that there's a time now, too, when you come in, and you don't know what's going to happen in that time. And that's a really important piece of the decision. I'm trying to think. The other thing is that if you have some special interest, this staff, I joke with Allison and some of the other folks that they must have some tests or something here because the staff is like cookie cuttered. And I don't mean that in a bad way. They're so supportive and caring, and just it's not at least they really are either really good actors or they're really good people, one or the other. And it's like they're almost all the same in their ability to be helpful. But with that is, if you want to do something, they'll be there to help you develop that. And I've sort of developed a poetry thing here coming out of COVID. And when we came in, it was 2 months later, COVID hit. We moved in December. In February, it was COVID City, and this place shut down. And that was really tough for her. We really weren't together. And, but within that, I developed this thing with poetry, which has sort of taken on its own life. And Susan has her own interest, which she has brought to life here. And the staff, the reason I talked about the staff is really happy to take something that you might have an interest in and to develop it both for yourself and maybe as part of this community, because that's what this is. It really becomes a community that you're going to be living with. And it's sort of like when you first move in here, it's like, uh-oh, these are the people I'm going to spend my time with, you know, really? But in the end, it becomes becoming part of a community, which at this age, we all know how to do that, hopefully by now. So I think I'll stop.
Well, Rand and I, and everyone here knows that Rand and I have quite different interests and quite different takes on the world, but somehow it works. And but I wanted to come here because I'm second generation RiverWoods, so I knew. My mother died 8 years before my dad moved to RiverWoods, Exeter. And he rattled around in his big old house morosely by himself. And finally, he moved into the Ridge, the second of the properties at Exeter. And immediately, I mean, within days, became the gregarious, fun loving man that I knew all my life until my mother died. He would sit, in dining or and one of the gathering rooms and yuck it up, drinking coffee, drinking cocktails, yucking it up. It was so heartwarming. And also um, the care, I saw the care and the staff real love. And I have one story to illustrate that. So he moved into the Ridge in the fall of 2004, just before the presidential election. And my two sisters and I had been there for days doing the move-in with him. And my sisters left, and I was living in Boston at that time, and I was just about to go back to Boston. And I said, okay, Dad, so you've got your photo ID so you can vote on Tuesday, right? And he said, photo ID? It turned out that because he is mildly disabled and was living in Maine, Maine allows you to renew your driver's license without a photo ID. And he explained that to me, and I said, well, where's your passport? And he went, somewhere, gesturing to the sea of boxes. And I couldn't control myself. So I went out into the hall, and I was walking down the hall sobbing. This is a Sunday night. I had to go back to work the next morning, everything. And the move-in coordinator just came up to me and wrapped her arms around me and said, what's wrong? And I said, oh, Daddy's not going to be able to vote on Tuesday because he doesn't have a photo ID. And she said, get in your car, go home. I will take care of it. To this day, I don't know what she did, but he voted on Tuesday. So that's what I knew. And when I got a mailing about RiverWoods Durham being constructed, I thought, oh, well, and Kathleen Toomey from the RiverWoods group is in the back of the audience, and she will laugh when she hears what I'm going to say next. I said, well, I'll just go to this one luncheon so that I can find out if we could ever afford to move there. And of course, you don't get to find that out at the first luncheon or the second luncheon or the third luncheon. But I felt strongly. I had, after my dad's experience, I had always thought that Rand and I should moved to Riverwoods, but when we were very, very old. We weren't very old. We were some of the youngest people to move in here, but we just thought this is an opportunity we're not going to have again, and it just made all kinds of sense. And it continues to make all kinds of sense and bring all kinds of joy to our lives. So anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Thanks, Susan. Good morning, all. I am Joanne O'Connor. I have lived here for 2 years, almost to the day. And my reasoning for being here was, well, the first one was that my mother, bless her soul, had the good sense to move to an assisted living facility when the time was right for her, which meant that whatever time she and I had together could be spent shopping or playing cribbage or eating together or sharing a movie, whatever, not spent doing her laundry and cooking her meals and changing her bed and all that stuff. So that was great. It was a wonderful gift, and I wanted to pass that gift along to the next generation. So I only have one daughter, and she had 3 teenagers at home and did not need a mother to take care of. Not that I needed any care at that point in time, but you never know. I was widowed. So let's back up. I've lived in New Hampshire my entire life, lots of different places within New Hampshire, but the second half of my life primarily in the Seacoast. I was very familiar with RiverWoods in Exeter because I had had friends that had gone there and liked it and had visited on several occasions. So I said, well, maybe someday when I'm really old, that will be where we'll wind up. And then I heard about this facility being under construction, and my daughter lives in Dover with her family. I said, that makes a lot of sense, although it still seemed somewhat premature. So I started coming to the meetings and listening to what they had to say. I did not do a lot of research into the CCRC concept and the nonprofit piece of it and all that, like some of my compatriots up here. But I knew it was a good place to be, and the quality of life was good, and the peace of mind was there, and those are all things that I was after. As far as the timing went, we had already downsized to some degree. We sold our home and had moved to a condo. We did a lot of traveling in our day, and we always said, oh, wouldn't it be easy to not have a home and just turn the key and have the mail held and off we go. So we had taken that step. My husband was then diagnosed with a potentially terminal illness, although not for a long time. And we still were very content where we were. But when he passed, it became clear, I felt much more vulnerable, I guess is the word, as being alone. If there are 2 people, one can always take up the slack for the other. But again, I didn't want to put that burden on my daughter. And I said, maybe the time is getting right to do this. So we started the conversation. I could have moved in sooner. And I said, I'm not ready. They always tell you, don't make too many big decisions after you've had a significant loss. So I knew the time wasn't right. I wanted to be mindful about what I did with my stuff, what I had left of it. I'd already started the process. And I said, don't call me, I'll call you. I put my money down, and I knew it was where I was going to end up, but I didn't know when. And they were great with that. They didn't bug me. I gave them an estimate as to when I thought I might be ready. And once in a while, Sherry would check in, see what my thought process was. And I said, no, I'm kind of still on the same track. So, and it pretty much came to that. She called and said, are you in fact ready? And I said, yeah, I think I am. And there was a unit available of the size that I wanted. And I looked at it and I liked it, and here I am. So that's kind of how it happened for me.
Thank you all. I get all weepy over there listening to you, and appreciate all the different perspectives that we have up here. The next question, the follow-up that I said earlier that I would ask of you is to share, and I'm going to call on one of you specifically to talk about something that most of the people in this room, if not everyone, has toured RiverWoods Durham. And two things came to mind as they were speaking. The first is we often, Therese or Dan or Kelly or I, will hear, what are you paying these people to say this stuff? Or did you set them up to be there when we walked by? And we don't have to do that because you can tell how authentic and sincere these folks are. And now I was thinking of that as I was sitting there, how wonderful you are to share your stories with us. And as we're touring, you've seen the gallery. The gallery is where you picked up your name tags this morning, and there's an exhibit there right now. So I'm going to ask all of our panelists to share, if they'd like, some of the things that they are involved in community life. But I'm going to ask Susan to lead us off because Susan and her committee have been instrumental in creating the exhibits that began here shortly after we opened. So Susan, if you would start us off.
Thank you, Sherry. One of the things that Rand and I did agree on when we decided to move here was that we thought it would be exciting to help shape the culture of a brand new community. And so we kind of both dived into that with both feet. And Rand's poetry program, that may sound a little esoteric, but it's a key piece of life here. And I can't describe to you how much it is. But anyway, so we had this space, and I like art, and I'd worked in museums along the way. And so I thought, well, let's have an art exhibit. And there were two of us at that time, and we had no idea. And this is actually during COVID, so in 2020, we put out a call for artists. We had no idea what we would get back. We didn't know who made art, anything. So we ended up with 32 responses, and that's when we established our kind of criteria for the exhibit program, although we didn't know it would be a program at that time, is one, this is about community, not about connoisseurship or juried exhibits. We take what we get and we make it work. Fortunately, we got wonderful art of all kinds from 32 residents. We had our inaugural exhibit in September of 2020. The exhibit that's hanging downstairs now is our 13th over those few years. And everything that's exhibited down there has either been made or collected by residents. And as you could see or see later, if you have a minute, it's from two of our residents, a husband and wife. The husband has since passed away, but so it's the wife's artwork and the husband's photography. And the reason that that has been such become such a signature part of RiverWoods Durham is the pride it engenders among residents and staff. Our neighbors made this stuff. She painted this. Or our neighbors lived in Saudi Arabia, and this is what they collected while they were there. And it's really become something that people are very, very proud of. And people go back to the gallery during the course of an exhibit and read more of the labels or take another look and another look at the pieces. So that is really something that seems to be sticking here, and we're very happy about it. Other things that I'm involved in, and I just sort of went with the art exhibits and everything else that I do here on the premise that if I like something, there's probably somebody else here who likes it too. So I bring literary authors here for readings. We're having one in 2 weeks, and also bring in theatrical events, including the improv workshops that we have periodically, that we had one of on Monday, and organize excursions to theaters off campus. So anyway, that's me. Who's next, Sherry?
So in my past life, that being prior to RiverWoods, my passions were reading, knitting, music, what else? Yoga. They're all here. I don't have to go anywhere to do any of that stuff anymore. It comes right here to me. So music is probably the biggest. We have a chorus that is growing, and a great leader who is a lot of fun. She was hired just before I came. I was sitting at brunch. It was one of the very first Sundays that I was here, and someone was playing piano, and I couldn't see who it was from where I was sitting, but I went and peeked around the corner afterwards and saw who it was and recognized her picture from a RiverWoods Facebook post as the person who was now leading what was then a pretty new chorus. So I introduced myself. I had done quite a bit of choral singing through my life, starting in high school and going on through church choirs and all that stuff. And I said I'd love to join, and she said, well, she said, they're 6 weeks into a rehearsal for an upcoming concert. It might be a little late for you to join. And I showed up anyway, and that is one of the things I would say for those of you who have made the decision, and when you get here, don't wait to jump in. Don't wait for an invitation, because that is I could be one of those people that would sit in my cabin by myself. But within the first week or two, I joined the knitting group and the chorus, and it's been great because it's not so overwhelming as to meet, 250 new residents and trying to remember their names. And as it turned out, I was one of the first ones that had arrived after there not having been any new residents. I couldn't figure out how everybody knew who I was because I didn't know anybody. But yeah, music and yoga and knitting. Knitting is the one that I would say was helpful at the very beginning, because it's one of the activities that you can do where while you sit and do the activity that you came to do, you can also chit-chat. So I got a lot of good information there from other residents about how stuff was and what to do and how to do it and all of that.
Excuse me. Okay, we'll get it together here. Just hang on. I was when COVID hit. We really had to stay because nobody knew what was happening. We had to stay in our rooms basically, and so it was okay. What can folks do over the video and that? And I said, hey, I can read a pretty good poem. Why don't I do that? And we worked to try to get that on the computer setup here. Didn't work, so then I set up a Zoom group, and we just sort of started reading poetry, and that's developed into both a monthly poetry night where I bring along poems with a theme, and then anybody who wants to bring a poem with the theme reads. And it becomes, we have about 20 times 25 people that come. And that's fun. I also in IL every week, I read over there for about half hour, 45 minutes, and develop a theme. And I mean, we had almost, and of course people can't stand for standing room, but we had like 15 or 20 people on Tuesday. And it's just fun. We also have here, Susan has organized this, poetry writing workshops also. And then also, I'm also involved in the ping pong group, which is an infamous group here of about 6 to 8 men that get together 4 times a week Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, 9 o'clock in the morning for an hour, and we just play ping pong. No games. We just do a round robin, bang the ball back and forth, and yak with one another. It's quite the crew. And I'm involved also during chorus, the chorus concerts and that. I also do part of the master of ceremonies sounds big. I don't know what else it would be called, but sort of keep the thing rolling as well as reading poetry there. So that just, I haven't read that much poetry, but being here, it developed into something else. And that's what you can do here.
So the women have also picked up on the ping pong just to have fun. Finding times around the 4 times. So that is something that's just beginning. I babysat until this past January. That's when everything started to open up again. And my 2 granddaughters now go to preschool. So I am now feeling like I'm a new resident, getting to experience all that there is here for us, both quantity and quality. I am doing yoga 3 days a week, thinking that maybe that's how I can keep my legs and everything going after chasing 2 for a couple of years. I don't want to lose that ability. So I'm doing that. And we have a great music program, and you both are involved with that, so I won't talk about the music. But I also have joined a book club. We have 3 or 4 book clubs going on of fiction and nonfiction. There's 3 or 4 which are really interesting, and so you can or start your own for the genre that you like. And um, then, of course, we have gardening has started now, and I don't know if you've driven by, but there's gardening plots for anyone who wants to garden. And that's something that I did last year with my granddaughters here, and we'll do again this year. Just to say, my granddaughters are known around here. It's just it's a place that friends come easily, family comes easily. We also love pets. I think we have about 18 dogs and 19 cats, or vice versa. So there's a lot of activity here, open door here that actually does make it feel like home. It really is a home for us. And I think I covered everything that I'm doing right now as I try to do more.
Um, I love seeing the dogs. I was a dog owner all of my adult life, and the last time I had a dog and he died, um, I decided, well, maybe I'm too old. I don't want to get a dog and outlive the dog. So I gave up on having a dog. And when I came here and see the dogs all the time, you meet them in the elevator or you meet them down in the living room. They're out walking all the time. It's quite delightful and as you said, very homey. Um, for me, I had been involved in music early in my life, but I had gotten away from that. I gave all that up. I focused. Um, and when I came here, one of the first things I came in right before the holiday time, so there were a slew of holiday concerts, various kinds. Well, one of the concerts that occurred were residents. Most of it is outside groups coming in, very wonderful groups. But there was a day when they had a Sunday afternoon when I guess it was like called it something. But various residents performed different things. What is it? Sunday sweets. Okay, yeah, they feed you too. So anyway, I heard this Native American flute group play. About 8 residents, and I had never seen this instrument or heard a group like this before. So the next day, I was in the fitness center. I go to the fitness center early in the morning, and the gentleman who runs that flute group is the only other person in the fitness center at that time. And so I said to him, I said, "Wow!" I said, "That was really neat. You guys, I don't know, how did you get involved in this?" So he's talking to me about it, and he said, "You ought to try it." So I said, well, he told me how there's a local person who makes the flute group, these flutes, Native American flutes. So he gave me all the information. I contacted her. She made a flute for me like 3 days later and came over and showed me how to play it, gave me music. And so I joined the flute group. And it's a lot of fun. It really is. It's 8 or 9 people. And it brought back some of my past experiences with music. That's been fun. The fitness center, I suppose like a lot of people, I always have good intentions about exercising. I would go through periods. Well, now I'm going to go regularly and exercise, or I'm going to walk every day, or whatever it is. And when you live in this area and it's a cold morning, you got to go out and get in your car in the cold to drive a couple of miles to the fitness place. It doesn't last long, the commitment. Well, now I had no excuse because the fitness center is right below me. So I have really taken to that. I enjoy it very much. I went to a variety of classes and then kind of developed my own routine. And they started a boxing class. I go to boxing class. None of my outside friends can believe that I'm boxing. It's just been um, very delightful, the number of things that you can get involved in and how fun they are. Life here is really fun. And that's what I'm finding. And somebody else said about your schedule. You look at your schedule for the day. Every time the new schedule comes out on Saturday morning, I go right through the new schedule. They give you the next 2 weeks schedule, and I circle all the things I want to go to, and then you're supposed to go online and sign up. So I go online and sign up, and it is. You get up in the morning and you have to kind of look at your calendar. It's like, okay, what did I sign up for today? It's it, you can stay as busy as you want or not. Well, that's what I'm finding.
Just have one more thing to say. Um, One of the wonderful things about here is about 1.5 miles of trails just across the street. And they're very nicely maintained. But on top of that, within 10 or 15 minutes drive of here, there's probably 10 different trails that are a mile, 1.5 miles, 2 miles. And Ruby, our dog, and I go out every afternoon and go on one of the different trails around here. And it's only like 10 minutes and all at once. And they're not used that much. So it's really a wonderful just for your own individual. And there's also a hiking group that goes out every Saturday. So it's not just here in the building, there's stuff in the surrounds.
I just want to say our hiking group does go out every Saturday morning, and we go to trails all over, and we go down at the beach to hike. If it's winter time, there's a lot to do. There are UNH trails as well as the town of Durham trails. But just to speak a little bit more about UNH, there's events, facilities like the indoor pool, a lot of things that we do. You can audit classes from UNH because we do have a relationship with them, and ride the bus. So it's really a whole nother venue, large venue that we are all able to take advantage of.
Thank you all. You all at some point this morning touched on the theme of community, and I think that that really speaks to a very important part of moving to a continuing care retirement community is that you are part of something bigger than yourself. And at some point, we all need someone besides ourselves, even if we are an introvert. And I wanted to just explain because Rand, he used IL, and when he was talking about his poetry reading, he was referring to, he regularly goes to our supportive living community, which is part of our community. It's all one community. And he is providing readings to residents who are in healthcare, whether they're in assisted living or memory support or enhanced nursing care. And that is something that one of you actually made that comment too. There are so many ways that you can give, it was Jeannie. There are many ways that you can give back to your fellow residents. There's a resident right now that's giving back to staff. She's providing micro seminars for staff development. Folks who may be adverse to public speaking or need help in resume building. She's a retired professional and she's providing her services to them. So it's really a microcosm of how we can support each other. And I just wanted to comment on that because you all touched on community so beautifully. Speaking of community, I want to introduce my community of staff. Standing in the back of the room is Jody Crotty. You saw her when you came in and got your name tag. She's our marketing coordinator. Next to her is Kelly Fires, senior living counselor, and Dan Witham, senior living counselor. Missing is Therese Lane, who probably half of you were expecting to see today. She sends her regrets. She will be following up with you. And then over here on the side, we have Kathleen Toomey, who is our vice president of marketing, and Chelsea Puffer, who is our marketing manager. And might the gentleman in the middle be Bob Lautenborn? Elaine's brother has arrived for a visit. Welcome, Bob. We're happy to have you. So those cards on the table now, if you have questions that you would like to ask our panel, now would be the time to jot them down. The crew, we're going to pick them up. We're going to ask those questions, and then we will get to lunch. Is there anything you touched, and actually I was going to mention, Jeannie mentioned the Saturday morning hikes. Our fitness manager, Mike Belanger, yesterday was sharing at a team meeting that they have offsite yoga beginning again. So whether it's Wagon Hill or going to one of the beaches, the fitness team takes interested residents and they go and they do yoga remotely outside, which, you know, we can't get enough outside time right now, this time of the year. Okay, I don't know if this panel will be able to answer this, but I would love to hear. The question is, what are the major differences between RiverWoods Durham and RiverWoods Exeter? Maybe that was more directed to us, but so I'll start and I'll just say that we are both a Type A contract. The difference in Durham's Type A contract is that there's no second person entrance fee. We have a little bit different setup, and we can talk with you about those contract details, but we're both Type A, which means that your continuum of care is included under your agreement with us. Durham, of course, is only 3.5 years old and was built as, you know, the building that you're in today, and that I think all of you have toured at this point. I think that Susan touched on it. We are a new community where the culture has been formed by what has occurred over our 3.5-year history. Susan, you probably have the most familiarity with RiverWoods Exeter because of your dad's experience. How would you say we're different?
Well, you know, I really haven't been there very recently, but I have to say the decor, because when I think of RiverWoods Exeter, and again, maybe all this is gone now, but I think of, you know, heavy brown woodwork and formal draperies and very traditional furniture. And here, I think we're much more casual, much more in terms of the built environment and that we live in. So just not as formal and more laid back. And I don't know if that carries over to the way the communities operate now, but I think that is one difference. And of course, we're smaller.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I was just going to say that. 150 independent homes versus 392 independent homes. So, you know, 200 and, you know, so 30 to 50, 230 to 250 residents versus nearly 600. So that is a very significant difference. Thank you for reminding me of that.
Right, and also the health center here is connected to our building, and that is something that is changing at RiverWoods Exeter.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, that's a good point too. The other thing I would say, I think one of the things that Therese and Dan and Kelly and I talk about regularly is location. So being just 10 miles from Portsmouth, being a mile and a half from the university campus, being able to walk to downtown Durham, which residents do on a daily basis. The same resident goes, same residents will go on a daily basis. But I mean, every day there are residents walking downtown because it is a sidewalk walk to, Durham Main Street. So that's another location difference that we have. The question I was just handed, are there plans to expand Durham? You may know that we're on an 11-acre campus adjacent to us on Stone Quarry Drive. We purchased 22 acres in 2020, and we will be looking at how we use that land. Right now it's purely recreational. It is trails, as Rand was mentioning, and there's a dog run area over there as well that's fenced in. We're just beginning to have conversations with staff and residents about how we might use that land, what might be the best purpose to serve this community, both the community of our current residents and our future residents, those of you who are on the wait list, how we might be able to provide services to you as well. So very preliminary steps here right now to figure out what's the best use of that land, and residents will be very much involved as we talk about that. The next question was also about what I just covered. The land was actually acquired in 2020, but there was that thing that was going on in 2020 that put it on the back burner. We're able to return to that now. This is a question, and I think this is and I would love to have the panel talk to this question. I have to be honest that I haven't heard this question recently, but it is a reality. So we've been open 3.5 years. We are starting to see some residents passing. And the question is, how does the community deal with that? So what are the services that are available? How do we deal with loss when someone does pass, or if someone is to move to the health center? Would anyone like to talk about that? Yeah, Joanne?
I would start by saying that is one of the very, 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 very few downsides to living in a community where we are all kind of in the second part of our lives, that loss is a piece of it. I have kind of been involved in that process since I was young. I think our society does a lousy job, quite frankly, in talking about the end of life. I wrote a paper on it when I think I was still in high school about that very subject, and I have been involved with hospice as a volunteer in past times of my life. So it's something I have given some thought to. I am a realist. I know that that's where we're headed. But I think the community has done several things. So we do, in very many instances, if the family wants it, there will be a memorial service right here at RiverWoods for a resident who's passed. We've got one coming up next week. The chorus will sing. She was in the chorus. And it seems to be meaningful. People will stand up and say what they appreciated about the person, and usually the room is full. It's in here, and there are no tables. The chairs are all packed in, and the ones I've been to. So there's that. They had made, at one point, there's an avid group of sewers. There's a lovely, I'm sure you've seen it, the craft room downstairs. Some quilters had made a quilt. And if the person, the individual, and or the family so desires, that quilt is placed over the person as they leave the facility for the last time. So it's, there are different ways, and I think people's differing views about how they want that to be are taken into account. It's all recorded ahead of time. We have a chance to say what we want at the end, and the community respects that because it's different for everyone.
I have not experienced loss that here, but we do have a social service department staff who are tremendous, and they do a lot of training, talk, information for all of us about what we need to be thinking about in order to let everyone know what our wishes are. And so it's really a very supportive social service program that we have here, because none of us want to think about it when we think about it for ourselves helps us work through some of the major issues that sometimes we don't even know we have. That's really good.
I would just like to add that a resident, and this goes back to the reference that was made earlier, that if there's something that you're passionate about and you share it with us, it's probably going to take on a life. And this happened with a concept called Death Cafe, which is not something new. I think it originated in the UK, but they are popping up now in other parts of the seacoast. This resident motivated our social services staff to create a Death Cafe here. Death Cafe is an opportunity to talk with your peers about what you would like the end to look like, how you want to be. All of those questions and all of those preparations that have made become so popular because I think, as Joanne was saying, it's something we don't think about, but once you do and you deal with it, it's very empowering to have all of those questions. It's not unlike any other thing that we don't want to think about, but once we actually face it and take some steps and make some preparations, you feel a bit more empowered about it. Um, it has been so popular that the social work team has had to add multiple new groups just to accommodate everyone who wants to be involved. So you can Google Death Cafe. You'll find a lot about it online as well. Rand, were you? Yes.
A corollary to this is moving over to yeah,
Supportive
this
living.
is ILS. I'm slightly dyslexic, so I'm always getting things screwed up. Oh, we're in supportive living. And the thing is that people can move back and forth, and I think that's really important. People may have some surgery, they're over in SL, and then when things get better, they come back over. Or they're in a difficult time physically, they go over to SL, and I just was talking with somebody who's coming back to independent living. And then there's people, you see people, friends go walking through the dining room to go over to SL to visit folks over there. So more and more it's becoming, when we first moved in, it was like, oh, the folks in back, you know. But it's more and more becoming this sort of like we're all in this together. And we're here long enough, we start seeing people getting older, for lack of a better way of saying it. And so there's going to be more of that now.
And to further on that, in 2020, this and really until last year, we were very regulated. It's healthcare, so going back and forth because of COVID. I'm talking about that was all because of COVID, the restrictions, and we still require visitors and staff to wear masks in the health center. That will probably change by the middle of this year, but it was all about protection. We were extremely fortunate at RiverWoods Durham in terms of the pandemic. So some of that was what we had to deal with in those first, really 18 months of being open, but it is completely open, and it is our goal, and it was before COVID, to just be, have everyone feel it as one community. This is for all of you. Can you talk about the first few days or week when you moved in? What was the transition like? What surprised you? And how did you adjust in those first few days? Yes.
Thank you. I like that question. Since I'm the most recent
Yeah.
resident, I was amazed at the help that came to well, first of all, in the room when you move in,
Keep it close.
there's a bottle of champagne. The refrigerator is packed with food.
There you go.
Do I have to repeat any of that, or? um, so the staff really has a tremendous. Oh, there's a sign outside the lobby. Welcome, Elaine Lauterborn. You just there was posters on the bulletin board. We have a new resident. I mean, it's just you feel so welcome, and then other people quickly get to know you because they see all of this. But also um, the the pit in my hall. I'm in 3B. Um, the other residents who came on the day of my move-in, I had friends helping me move in. The other people on the hall would come to the door, knock on the door, introduce themselves, offer to, help with any way, any questions. I mean, the atmosphere was just really heartwarming. Because it's a stressful day, you know, month before you get to that stressful. It was just a very wonderful. Once I got settled, they give you a map. I mean, places. I spent the Saturday morning. I moved in on a Thursday, and the Saturday morning, I just spent a couple of hours with that map, walking around the building, trying to find everything, walking on the outside, um, and it's just I was really overwhelmed by how welcome everybody, staff and
The ditto, ditto, ditto. And Elaine said in passing that there was food in the refrigerator. There's food in the refrigerator for breakfast the next day, or for supper that night. And also there's food during the day for your movers. You don't have to worry about feeding them because Riverwood's right there for that. One of the things that I enjoyed because of moving boxes and boxes and boxes, I shouldn't say that. It's going to be fine. When you empty a box, it just goes out in the hallway and then it magically disappears. You don't have to break it down and find out where to lug it. It's just that kind of support from everyone. So that was really good. And they know it takes a couple of weeks to unpack and get settled with questions. So everyone's right there for you, even as I had said earlier, from before the move in to at least a couple of weeks after. Every staff, every department knows you're the new one, and you can have whatever you want. There's a lot of support.
So this question is about the Durham community. The question is, are there volunteer opportunities in Durham? Are any of you involved outside of RiverWoods Durham?
One of the things that I've just started, and there's a group of about 6 of us who are called readers, and we go over to the Lee, which is 10 minutes away, the Lee Elementary School, and we am in various classes and either read. I just happen to be with this 3rd grade class that is doing a poetry gig. I didn't know that. I thought I was going to be reading stories, but so that's one thing that comes to mind.
I'm a Rotarian, have been a Rotarian since the late 80s, and there's a wonderful Rotary Club here called Durham Great Bay. So they serve Durham, but they also serve Newmarket, Lee, Barrington, Madbury. Did I get him, Rick? That's it. Another Rotarian sitting in the audience. So 3 of us right now at RiverWoods are members of the Durham Great Bay Rotary, and it's a great. Now I'm going to be talking about Rotary, but lots of service projects. They service the towns, all their towns, pretty equally. There's a lot of, I call it a small but mighty club, and there's a lot of doing. And if you're around on June 17th, there's a summer fest over at UNH's Boulder Field, so we welcome you to join us.
Also can get involved in the politics of Durham. I was actually on the ballot, which was it was a tough campaign. I was the only one on the ballot. But I'm a library trustee for the Durham Library, and one of the folks here is also a select person for the town.
And she was the highest vote getter in the town. Yeah. And a number of residents are involved with activities at the university. 2 residents particularly are involved in keeping everybody, staff and resident alike, advised of activities that are going on there. There was actually a question, and it was part of this card, are there opportunities for continuing education at the university? Anyone in the state of New Hampshire can do that. You get it at a very low, just administrative fee rate. The same resident who is a selectman regularly attends classes at the university, and there are others that do as well. You can audit, which she does, or you can actually take the class. Lots of lectures that are available for you to attend, and as someone mentioned, there is a committee here that brings speakers from the university in on a regular basis. So it's a big, relationship, but whether they're coming to us or we're going to them, taking advantage of the resources of the university, not the least of which is the Diamond Library. So Rand is involved with the Durham Public Library. They bring books to the community that residents can borrow. And then, of course, we have our own library downstairs. So the last question isn't for the panel, and it's probably something would be best that you talk with Dan or Kelly or I directly in regards to your long-term care insurance and how you can use that with our CCRC contract. There is a value in having that. We don't recommend that you get rid of it, which is what the question was. Should I discontinue it? At least move into your community, get settled, and then evaluate what the costs of that policy are and how you'd be able to use it in the community. Each policy has a little bit, different guidelines, but generally it's related to how long you've been in the situation, have you, exceeded that 100-day waiting period, and then how you would use it. You wouldn't use it in independent living. You would use it if you were in healthcare. And question, which hasn't been an issue since the day that Durham opened because of the real estate market that we've all benefited from if we're a seller, not if we're a buyer, on the Seacoast. And that is, if you are moving into the community and you are having trouble with the sale of your home, how can we work with you? There is always that choice of if you were to get a bridge loan, but it may be something where your closing date, the sale of your home, is a little bit beyond when you are moving into the community, and we will work with you to the best of our ability. So just take that as a supportive comment. We've not had a problem yet with someone, A, being able to sell their home or being able to work with them if they needed a little extra time to get that taken care of as they were becoming a resident of the community. So I think we have answered all of the questions, and it is time for lunch. Our panelists are going to join you at the table. We're going to have you go up a table at a time. So we'll start in just a moment and have you go through the buffet. The entire buffet is gluten-free, so that's good news. If you could let us know, unless Jody already knows where our vegetarian, she does know. Okay, so if you requested a vegetarian meal, we're going to bring that to you directly at your seat. And we will start with this table right here. If you would like to go up and start us off at the buffet, that would be great. A big round of applause for Elaine, Jeannie, Rand, Susan, and Joanne. Thank you very, very much.